It was pretty clear at the end of 6 that Chris had had enough. He'd been very successful in Britus, and there was an interview in one of the science fiction magazines which said wild horses wouldn't drag him back. And then Rob and I split up.
After the Series 6, when Rob and Doug split up, it did feel like that was it. You know, we wouldn't be doing any more.
We were thinking, what's going to happen now? Is this the end?
I just, it got so that we weren't doing anything else except Red Dwarf. We were doing the novels, we were doing the TV show, we were doing the American version, and in between we were sort of looking over games and all kinds of things, and I just felt like I'd had enough of that. I wanted to do something else.
It was something that Rob had suggested several times throughout our writing career. The first time, I think, was just before we went into the studios to record the very first series of Red Dwarf. And the second time was right about season 4, and then the last and final time was sometime after 6 when we were doing a series for ITV called The 10%ers.
It's the pressure of knowing night after night I've got to go out there and give the performance of my life.
You can do it. I know you can. Go on, Charles, go out there and knock 'em dead.
And an area of low pressure will sweep down from the north.
Also during that time, I went. The show had won an Emmy Award, and Rob Grant and I flew to New York to receive it from Tony Curtis, which was a great thrill, and I was on a plane with Rob and in a hotel and spent days and days with him, and he wouldn't tell me what it was, Bobby. No.
No one's really explained to me properly what went on there. They were together for so long, you know, since they were like small boys, you know, so the whole thing was slightly weird.
I'm sure people want to know what the reason was, and if anyone ever finds out, give me a ring. I mean, I think basically when Rob felt under pressure, he felt that if he was writing on his own, that pressure would go away. We were actually writing the third Red Dwarf novel, and he just wanted to write on his own. So he suggested that he wrote one chapter and I would write a chapter, and then he would write the next one and I would write. And we tried that for a while, but it didn't work, and then we kind of ran out of time, and we've been commissioned to write a series for Kryten. And Rob then said, okay, well, I think we should write separate episodes, which didn't thrill me because neither of us had written before, and I felt we were on a bound to produce a really good series.
The first rule of being a good agent is what? Never get caught. Never sleep with a client. Now, it's come to my attention that in your case, this is not true.
Who told you that? It was Tracy Higgs, wasn't it?
No, it was not.
Gemma Smith?
No. It's not important who told me.
Not the Swain sisters, the little minxes. Mary Dixon.
I didn't mean to pry, but I have to ask, has this ever happened before?
So I wrote 3, he wrote 3. People wanted him to do some rewrites on his, and he didn't want to, and left. And then I was then suddenly solely in charge of the thing and having to produce either a new script or a vastly rewritten script, one a week for I think it was 4 weeks. So that was an interesting time.
And also I did a series called I Camcorder for Grant Naylor Productions, which was, you know, it had started out as a Rob and Doug idea.
Now, there are a few basic rules which crop up from time to time, like a sense of direction. They just came out of the tent and exited from the screen on the left-hand side, like me. And the next time you see us, we should enter from the right-hand side of the screen. But if I go out this side and reappear this side, well, people get confused. They begin to hate you, and this is how wars start.
And I was at their office a lot at that time, so I would then sort of be there working on the script with that. And then, you know, Doug would be there pacing around worrying, and then Rob would walk in with lawyers, and you're going, what's going on? You know, it was all kind of, it got quite, you know, and I never knew what was going on. I don't know, I used to look at them through the partition screen in the office, try and lip read them I want all the money. You can't have it, you bastard. Because of the state the show was in, when he decided he didn't want to write anymore, it caused a big problem. Because clearly the BBC wanted to make more, the fans wanted more. It was a successful show, you know, so it was just, his timing wasn't spot on.
So I started to try and put the team back together with Rob. That wasn't successful. The first thing I did was get Ed. I thought that was important to get Ed because Ed had always been, he's a great comedy director. He's very funny outside of the show.
So I met up with Doug for a drink somewhere in Soho. It was a long drink.
Red Dwarf always needs a sort of leader because, you know, when myself and the others, you know, stand around and, you know, want to get the anecdotes out of the way for 5 hours before we actually start doing any work, you know, you need someone to say, right, we're going to start work now.
It was remarkably unexciting in the respect that it felt like I'd never been away. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't one party popper when I came back.
And then we went off to see Chris to see exactly how he felt.
I had been working incredibly hard for the best part of 6 years, doing 2 series a year, British Empire and Red Dwarf.
My thought was, we don't want Chris just not to be there anymore. We want to write him out if he's no longer going to be in the series.
So we went to go and see Chris before Series 7, pretty sure that he really didn't want to be part of it. And then, you know, we were pleased that he did. He did want to be part of it. And so we got him for as much as we could.
At that point, I really did need to sort of wash my hands of sort of heavy-duty TV work for a while.
I think at this stage we all started to realise that our whole lives would be defined by this bleeding show. Do you know what I mean? And you're either comfortable with that or you're not comfortable with it, you know.
Around Series 5 and 6, there certainly were production problems, problems somewhere around the management level, frankly, that made life on the floor in rehearsals and getting the show shot more stressful than they probably needed to be.
Chris had got used to the way Britis was shot. It was a much more conventional sitcom. With Red Dwarf, we were constantly trying to, you know, push things as far as they could be pushed. And when you've got animatronics, when you've got blue screen, when you've got those kind of special effects, it's kind of like making a mini movie without the money. And what that means is you haven't got the preparation time. That's where you save the money. And so when things go wrong, when they break down, people are hanging around. It's no one's fault. Everyone's, you know, working their nuts off and do from day one to the final day. But for an actor, yeah, you are hanging around. He just wanted to show up, do his lines, go home. And everyone wanted that, but it just wasn't physically possible.
Plus, we're all difficult people, you know. We've all got our own idiosyncrasies, you know. We're all very much parts of our character, you know.
That was the make or break series, I think. Would it work with, you know, one character missing? Would it work with one writer missing? You know, would it work with the audience missing? You know, all these things were thrown at us in one go.
One of the strains on Red Dwarf is the strains on the writing. It's a tough gig to write. It's actually simple maths. There's only one writer now as opposed to 2, so we need to get some others in. It's a great idea, and it worked to a certain degree. But like I said earlier, you can't just walk into Red Dwarf. You've got to sort of breathe it a bit and live it a bit. And it's difficult even for writers just to fall into it and engage into it.
There's a huge difference between overlooking a script and even rewriting it in bits and pieces to genetically producing the core idea yourself. For new writers, I mean, it's just a job. There are a certain number of rewrites they're happy to do. Generally, it's about 3, and then it's like, hey, they want to move on and do the next thing. When it's your own thing, there's no limit to the number of rewrites you do. You're just we'll rewrite and rewrite until there is no more time to rewrite.
The original idea was that there'd be a lot more writers involved than there actually were, and so it was actually quite a small team in the end. It was me and Kim Fuller and James Hendry.
Having other writers, I felt that it was maybe not a good idea because it was a step into the unknown. I hadn't worked with other writers, so I couldn't guarantee how it would work. But equally, I would have just looked like a complete arrogant idiot to go, no, I don't even want to go down that alley. I just want to write them on my own.
I think it must have been incredibly hard for Doug. I mean, I can't imagine now looking back. I was so worried about what I was doing, my little bit. I didn't really sort of take into account what he would have been going through. But it must have been a very hard transition for him to go from that really well-tried writing partnership that clearly worked incredibly well.
We decided to bring a new Kochanski in and not replace Rimmer, which would have been the sensible thing to do if we hadn't been planning to make the movie. If I replaced Chris, then it would have been bye-bye Chris. There would have been no Chris for the movie because he wouldn't have come back. I'm convinced of that. So we had to leave that kind of vacant, that role.
Everybody was totally professional, whether they saw it as a good thing or not. You know, we always supported the team.
I mean, I quite like Claire Grogan. I think she's a lovely lady. But I don't think she was ever that popular with the writers.
For the audition, what I read at the audition, she was quite strict. Very, very intelligent, which is a challenge, and very professional, and bossy, which I am. It just felt right.
I just wanted to say sorry for the dear John who was cowardly.
What dear John? Oh, that, I've completely forgotten. Seems like years ago.
It was last week.
I remember we were auditioning her, she's sitting on a sofa, and I went, yes, this girl is funny and she can act. That's great. And she looks great.
I just wanted to see if we could be friends, that's all. You haven't answered any of my email, and I just hate not being liked. I'm a like junkie.
Ed had shot a series with Jasper Carrott called The Detectives, and he'd shot it in a different way. It'd been shot without an audience, on video, but it was single camera.
Without the restriction of the audience, you can do much more with lighting, you can be much more adventurous. So we thought we'd try that.
So it would look much more sumptuous, it would look much more like film, and this would be terrific practice for when we came to shoot the film.
And of course, Red Dwarf was a show that, up to series 7 anyway, had about 20 minutes sometimes of a show done pre-record anyway.
And you had time to kind of look at your script and go make sure you knew that bit, because you're only doing that bit. You're only doing this little bit, 4 lines. And you walk in, diddly-diddly-doo, diddly-doo, diddly-doo. Oh, that was it! You can have a cup of tea! I was like, yes, this is so good.
But I also gave something else, and that is you could do a slightly more different, more dramatic, I guess, kind of performance as well, because you have the time to sort of work with it.
But I think, you know, by halfway through the entire series, I really missed the audience, because I think all of us came from a live performance background. So when there was a crowd in, you know, the flip side of it was we all raised our game when there was a crowd in.
There was a lot of talk about how it wouldn't have the right dynamic or the same dynamic that they'd been used to before. I don't think necessarily that during the filming you noticed that, but certainly we hired a studio at Teddington to show the whole series in front of an audience over 2 days, I think, and that was very difficult.
Sometimes the audience will laugh over the feed line and completely miss the gag, you know. That's what's good about doing it in a live audience, because you can wait, you know, if they've laughed over the feed, you can wait and sort of, you know, look around and stuff like that, and then deliver your punchline, you know, but you can't do that if it's already been filmed.
And the audience actually did react very well, but it was, I think, a very difficult dub for the dubbing mixer afterwards to try and get the audience reaction in the right places and at the right levels.
You look at the 4 bit for about 900 Clearasil commercials.
I loved the look of Series 7, because to me, I mean, the first episode, Ticket to Ride, I thought, holy cow, it looks like the X-Files, fantastic.
Red Dwarf tended to lean itself towards production value, so we thought, well, here's a way to inject a bit more.
The format was slightly different because Rimmer had gone off, or was going off, and Kochanski was coming in, and also